One's ready. Go!
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. We got a great one for you here. Kyle Bond, he was a U.S. Marine Corps enlistee. He got a couple deployments under his belt, went and assessed, selected, and got picked up at MARSOC. And then from there, that wasn't enough. He decided to move on to his next life. He's currently a med student using an awesome program that the military has for folks that you might not even know about. Well, that wasn't even enough. Kyle is also a guy that just decided that, the military moving process can be cumbersome, and there's a whole lot of ways that it could be a lot easier. And he made his own app over at arkmobileapp.com. And we're going to talk about that too. So before you go there, go to check out onesready.com. We would really appreciate that. We're doing a lot of work on the website to get it back up and running and looking good. And we're just idiots and we're just trying, but go check it out. You can check out our link tree inside of our Instagram profile, where you can find literally everything from workout plans. Kyle's app is going to be in there directly after this episode, so we'll have it available for you as well. Make sure to check out our partners. This episode is brought to you by Barbell Apparel. Go over to Barbell Apparel and use our code ONESREADY at checkout. It's, maybe sometimes you want to dress up. Maybe you're a more athletic dude. You want to have some clothes that actually fit you and help you look good in every single environment, from the gym to the boardroom. So go check out Barbell Apparel. We love them over there, and we love everything that they're doing. While you're at it, go check out Modern Athlete Strength Systems. You can use that code ONESREADY at checkout for all of your training needs, from nutrition to actual workouts. Those guys are awesome as well. Great partners of the podcast, Modern Athlete Strength Systems. You guys have seen their coaches on talking nutrition, fitness, training versus working out, all of those things. You've seen them. Go check them out over at modernathletestrengthsystems.com. And again, go check out Barbell Apparel. They're great partners of the podcast. We love them. We all wear their clothes. Jared's got their shirt on in this episode as well. So go check us out wherever we are. Hit that link tree. It's got everything you need. Without further ado, on to Kyle Bond, MARSOC Raider turned doctor, turned awesome dude that's still helping the community. Hope you like this one. Welcome back to the team room, everybody. I stole the intro from Peaches just after its season. You got the whole team today. You got Peaches, you got Trent, you got myself. You know who we are. We're the Ones Ready team. We've got 70 years of soft experience. We're just here to try to help you guys be successful in everything that you're doing. Peaches was a combat controller. He's so close to being fully out. Trent is a special reconnaissance guy. We call him Weather Boy here on the channel just because it makes him mad. And I was a PJ. And that's who we are. Kyle, welcome to the team room. What's up, brother?
Dude, thanks guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Kyle has to read a disclaimer, and I'm going to give a disclaimer before Kyle reads his disclaimer. Is all of this stuff is stupid, and the fact that we have to read disclaimers for you guys and not come after people using the weight of the United States government is stupid and dumb. But we have to do it because that's the rules of the game. That was my own disclaimer about the United States government. Kyle, I assume you have your own disclaimer. Why don't you read that off?
Yeah, certainly. All right, here it goes. We'll get it over with. I'm an active member of the military. The thoughts and opinions shared by me are my own and do not reflect those of the DoD, nor imply a relationship of any kind. Additionally, I'm the co-founder of a company that produced ARK, the Military Move app. As always, all services are offered free of charge to the military community.
That sounded like a SEER event video,
Yeah,
like
it is.
Can I get a
blinking
glass of
SOS?
water?
Yeah, I need to talk to my
dudes with an
boss.
ISIS flag right behind you with AKs.
Are you okay?
Camera in the
bro?
background.
That's one of my favorite internet reels is like there's a terp, and he's obviously doing it as a joke, but he's in the team room getting ready to go, and he's like, I fell down some stairs. The Marines never hit me. They're very nice to me. It's hilarious. So Kyle, we heard from the disclaimer there, as dumb as I think personally that stuff is, and that's me speaking as my own American self. Also, General Slife, you're a terrible person, and I hate you. That's me speaking on my own as well. Anyway, he's seriously the worst thing that's ever happened to us. Anyway, Kyle, we heard from your little intro there that you're an active duty military member. That's why we brought you on. We were introduced through a friend of ours from one of our Sauce Tea episodes, our friend Sully. And Sully was like, hey, you got to talk to this dude, man. He was super cool. He's got an awesome backstory. He's doing awesome stuff now, to include that ARK Military Move app, which I'm a huge fan of, man. You found a way to give a cheat code. And we're going to talk about that later in the episode. But man, tell us your little backstory. How did you wind up in the military? How did you pick where you were going to go in life?
Well, first, that's humbling, more than I deserve. But and so where did I start out? So I grew up small town, Northern California, up in the mountains, real small, like 7,000 people. As I was growing up there, like first job was like on a farm. Although one of the unique things about that school was since we were in the mountains, we had a snowboarding team. So did that for a while, which was great, super fun. I ended up graduating and enlisted in the Marine Corps in 2010 in the communications field. I first started out as like a data network guy, and I hated it. All of my, compadres were all like playing World of Warcraft and stuff like that. Luckily, though, ended up getting and taking a liking to being a radio operator. So did that for a while, did 2 tours as a radio operator, one on a MEU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, one to Afghanistan. And then after that, ended up taking selection at MARSOC. And then thankfully passed. Everything went well there. Ended up going jump, dive, CQB, breacher leader, became a JTAC, did 2 more tours with MARSOC. Following that, actually got a really good opportunity, which we can kind of get into that whole story and how that played out. The military came out with this program called the Enlisted to Medical Degree Prep Program. And I never thought I'd get in. They only accepted like 5 people out of the Marine Corps each year and in each service. But fortunately, I was able to get in. That's where I ended up meeting Sully. And then now I'm basically transferred over. I went from Marine Corps to the Army. Now I'm at USHIS and I'm a med student there. So second year in the hospital, just working all the time, trying to figure out this whole doctor thing. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Plenty of avenues we can go down, and ready to go wherever.
Remember when we were talking earlier in the pre-brief, and I was like, "Hey, the one thing that guests do is they speed through and they give their entire career in their intro, and then we got to go. Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning. Okay, Kyle, let's go back to the beginning. Why the Marine Corps, man? So
I figured that would probably happen, but long dialogues, man, they're hard.
Yeah. Northern Cali, right? So my favorite part about California is it's so close to America. You decided living the good life. You're in Northern Cali. You're snowboarding on the snowboarding team. What in the world, especially 2010, if we put ourselves in the context of 2010, if I remember correctly, and I think I do, that was pretty hot and heavy for the United States military in GWAT. We were fighting across, 3, sometimes 5 theaters at once, depending on where you're including kind of like Yemen and some of these other places where we had operations going on. What took you from a Northern California snowboarder to the United States Marine Corps? Because those 2 things are a little bit, there's a spectrum, and I love using the spectrum in reference to the Marine Corps. But those are at different ends of the spectrum. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, well, so my dad was in the Marine Corps. He was in the Marine Corps during Desert Storm, and he had, we'll call it like the, adventure of his lifetime. And all growing up, I was surrounded by him, obviously, but as well as like some of his friends who had served. In my small town every year, there's like the Veterans Day Parade down Main Street. There's a VFW, there's an American Legion. Like the whole community is like very military oriented. And so it always had like a big impression on me. Now, when I graduated high school, I was looking at college and I was looking at that pipeline and everything like that. And if I'm being completely honest, the war sounded way more fun.
It is pretty fun.
So I was like, I could go to college, I can get all this like student debt and still probably have no life experience. Or I could join the military. And one of the things that was, my high school coach, he was like very classic line was like, enjoy this now. These would be like the best years of your life, and I was like, if high school is the best years of my life, like kill me now, dude. Like there's like no way that, and I didn't have a bad time, but it was just like, that's supposed to be it.
Would you guys ever go back to high school? Would you guys ever
gone back? No.
Yeah. People are always just like, oh, if I could go back to one time in my life, I go back to high school. Kyle, I tend to share your opinion on this one. If you're saying that you want to go back to high school because that was the best time of your life, I wish you could. I wish you could jump out of this timeline and go back to high school so that I didn't have to deal with you. Because what a dumb thing to say.
But that's the same kind of mentality where, they can't get out of that high school football era, because they were the star of the team, and and then they end up selling insurance, which, hey, that's an honorable profession, but like I can't think of anything.
Shout out to my boy Chester, the #1 insurance salesman in Florida. That stuff is tight.
We love you, Chester.
He's the man. Chester, what's up? Special shout out to you, bro. Don't you let Peaches shame you for selling that insurance. You keep selling it. So, Kyle, we're an Air Force centric podcast here. We're obviously Air Force dudes or whatever else. So we always ask the question: I understand the family connection, but was there some other terrible accident that caused you to go to the Marines as opposed to picking the Air Force? What was that decision making process like?
Dude, I think the Air Force just selected me as like a non-rec right out of the gate. My parents, they were like, "Hey, look, obviously there's a war going on. Like, we would prefer you go to college. So meet us in the middle here. Talk to every single branch before you go in." And I already had kind of like an eye for the Marine Corps, but I went and I talked to the Marine Corps, talked to the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. Air Force was the only ones that never called back.
We don't need you.
Don't need you.
I
Nah,
think they could smell the
we're all full up
aroma.
on operators, bro. Guys that can do impossible things. Now we're good.
Well, so going back to your parents, real quick.
Yeah.
How supportive were they? I know they kind of like, because, and the reason why I'm asking is because we get a lot of people that go like, dude, my parents have all but disowned me because I said that I wanted to join, and like and they're determined that I go to college because that's the future and that's the only possible way I could be successful. So how did they kind of handle that?
Man, so I gotta say I'm really lucky with my parents. My mom obviously wanted me to go to college. Part of that being, I have parents and step parents. Only one of them ever went to college, and only two of them graduated high school. So for them, going and getting an education was, peak family performance. My dad was, seeing some of the things that he saw in Desert Storm. He was like, "Look, you can do it if you want to do it. Just do me a favor. Don't go infantry." And then my mom and my dad eventually, once I turned 18 and they saw that I wasn't really going to do anything else and this is what I wanted to do, some switch flipped. And, I'm not sure what the internal dialogue was for them, but they really turned around and were just fully supportive and, sent me off, was there at graduation, was there for, pickup on deployments and stuff like that. So, not trying to be divisive between kids and their parents, but at the end of the day, when you turn 18 and you have an idea of what you want to do with your life, there is a way to get wherever you want to go. And if you're just willing to put in the work and have the discipline to get there, you'll satisfy yourself, but you'll, prove your parents right and that they raised you right and that you can do whatever it is that you're setting your mind to. And it's not to be overly motivational. It's just sometimes you're going to meet that resistance, and that's the kind of thing you need to prove to yourself that you just got to do it. You got to go for it.
Yeah, and we've addressed that with I'd say probably the majority of parents are supportive, but I've talking to 18-year-old, 19-year-olds who are either in high school or college and it's mom and or both, dad, mom and dad, both, yeah, whatever.
Good morning, Peaches.
Yeah,
You're doing great. You're doing great. You're doing great, Peaches.
I started off great. I spilt my coffee and
I love to see it. There's a very distinct moment on your face where you realize that you just said something, and then it takes you down a little offshoot, and then you're like, "Wait, I'm getting off track," and then you bring yourself back.
Just pulling the thread back. Where did we go? Where did we go?
Wait, no, I'm getting. I don't need to say
shit.
mom and dad. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
But
sorry, mom and dad.
It's a shame in my mind because you have somebody who's driven, they know what they want to do, and they're not getting the support from their parents who have essentially, if everything was good, provided support to them for the last 18 years. And then It's just this one thing. And it's like, dude, they're 18, 19 years old. You don't get to say that anymore. And why would you want to keep that from them? And let them go out there and experience it.
And there's nothing like the military experience. This is a perfect example of it, right? Before today, we hadn't met each other, right? I've had access, thankfully to many, hundreds of your guys' podcasts and everything like that. But through mutual friends in the military, we all met up and are now having this. And it's kind of one of those things where the military is kind of this like magic box where people kind of have this idea, if they're viewing the military from outside, that they're going to go in and they're going to have the military experience however they envision that in their mind, and then they'll get out and they'll just be different, right? Maybe they'll be easily employable, maybe they're going to have some stuff going on because of whatever happened in the military, but it's just not like that. When you join, you're immediately going to get thrown into like a very difficult environment just from basic training. That's going to change you, but on a net positive. You'll have more discipline, you'll have more drive, you'll have more people that aren't saying you should do this. You're saying like you will show up on time, you will wear the right uniform, you will do what you're told. And if you can do these things, then all of these doors are going to be open for you for like professional development, career development, all the different like deployment opportunities. You're going to end up meeting a bunch of people from all over the country. Like most people, they don't travel more than 20 miles from where they grew up, and that's where they live their entire life. You get to live your entire life across our country, across multiple countries. I mean, the life experience that you get in the military, it's, in my opinion, it's like Willy Wonka's ticket. You know what I mean? You wouldn't get this anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get that. You joined the Marine Corps and there's like some positives, but at what point did you realize that you shouldn't have been a Marine? You made a bad choice.
Yeah, as soon as they told me that they don't make doctors in the Marine Corps, I was like, oh, all right, well.
Oh man, I messed up.
It wasn't the shave.
Like,
it wasn't
like,
the
we
shaving
really
every
get
day of the
everything
week.
from the Navy.
Yeah. The Marine
Every
Corps is the
medical
only
aspect.
place. The Marine Corps is the only place you can be going on a Sunday to the Class 6 just to get yourself a nice little bottle of wine for the afternoon, and you'll get yelled at in a parking lot for having a 5 o'clock shadow.
100%.
That's my favorite thing about the Marine Corps.
Hey,
Tuck
Devil
your shirt
Dog.
in. How come you didn't shave today? It's like, bro, it's Sunday.
I was at JM school with a Marine guy. He was like a Marine like E7 or E6 or E7. He was whatever. We were down at Fort Benning, Georgia, and that's a real story. Like we were getting together on Sunday to study, like have a little study group. And the guy came in, he's like, "Man, listen to this bullshit." And then and that was the exact story. He's like, "I was going in, I was getting an energy drink, and I walk out and overwalk some hardo, and he's like, 'Hey there, Devil Dog. Can't help but notice you didn't shave today, huh?' And he was like, 'Come on, bro.'" He was like a MARSOC guy. He's like, "Come on, bro. It's fucking Sunday." And he was like, "That's not how we roll."
We had like when I was on the teams, we had the full no shave shits getting ready to go out the door, right? Everybody knows our team's up, there is no lack of awareness, right? Walk right in the PX, full beard, everything like that, because it's authorized, and then immediately get kicked out by the sergeant major. Sergeant major is like, "Oh, you got hair on your face. You need to get out." It's like, no. Here's all the things everybody knows. They're like, "I don't care.
Beat it.
It's a Marine Corps installation." But you take the good with the bad. If he wasn't there trying to enforce discipline and all that other stuff, then who knows what happened. But it is definitely the Marine Corps is its own rule.
No.
Kids would have
what
more
would happen?
crayons
People would just walk into that thing. They would buy a thing, and then they would walk out. That's what would happen. Just some of them would have scruffy faces. That's it.
That's true. I think that's an Air
We
Force
didn't
thing.
lose Fallujah because of beards, bro. Like it didn't happen.
That's so true. That's so true. That's one thing though about like the Air Force and frankly like the Army and the Navy that I've seen is like you guys would say like common sense, and it makes sense and like just like let people live, but in the Marine Corps, that's what they're known for: strict discipline all the time.
The Air Force is as close as you can get to being in the real military. It's really cool.
Pretty close.
Is that what you think? Air Force is as close as I got to living at the Four Seasons. I stayed at your guys' barracks one time. That was nuts. Everything was new. Everything was clean. Like the soap was fresh. You know what I mean? Like in the wrapping. It was crazy.
Who authorized that? Who said that you were allowed to go in there?
We have questions.
Usually we don't.
You have questions how I got in there?
Yeah. Somebody inside that building was like, "Watch out, y'all. Poor people around here."
The value of that building plummeted immediately. Anyway, so you're in the Marines. So like on your way to MARSOC. So like a lot of people join, and I don't know if this was you, but like when I first joined, there was no way that I would have been like, "Hey, I'm going to be like a jumping out of planes special operations guy," right? But like your family's like, "Don't be infantry." You're like, "Cool," but you ended up being a radio operator and doing some deployments with that. And I'm assuming that those experiences kind of built you up to give you that confidence to do with some of the things that you did. Can you talk a little bit about that? Your radio operator days.
Yeah, 100%. So, I came in 2010, and I wanted to deploy right away. And there was a lull there. Basically, like Marso had just basically wrapped up, and the general tone at the unit that I was at was like, "War's over, like we're done." And I was like, "You're not done until I get like a deployment out of it." You know what I mean? Like I I joined to go to war, and
We're done when I say we're done.
100%, which is like
Roger that,
so
Corporal.
ridiculous. Like,
Roger
imagine
that.
that just like a PFC, showing up, be like, no, 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 not yet, not yet. But I ended up, my first tour going on a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And so it was 10 months at sea on a boat, went to the Middle East, had a couple port visits, which was phenomenal. But one of the moments that kind of shaped and kind of pointed me down the direction of special operations was as a radio operator, we were going to do this VBSS, this vessel board search and seizure operation. And recon was going to do it, but they needed a radio operator. And so I, as a radio operator, got attached to them. I got attached to a force recon team. And on that deployment, we went out on that VBSS mission. We ended up getting transferred from one large ship, an LHA, which I don't know what it means. I just know it's amphibious, to a DDG, a destroyer. And that was a real turning point because previously I had been a part of a large shop, and everybody's like doing their work and doing their job, and you have friends and stuff like that. But now I'm on this small team. There's maybe 8 dudes that were part of that team, and I'm just a fly on the wall because I'm an RO, and I didn't go through any like sort of like recon training or anything like that. But we started brawling in one of the spaces there, and as I won a couple times, and so they were like, all right, like this dude can hang out basically, not a part of the team, but he can hang out. And I just observed the entire time everything that was going on, and it was a small team. Everybody was actually like brothers. The people who were there cared about them as much as the team cared about. Trying to say what I'm trying to say is one of the things I was looking for is I wanted to work at a place where like the team cared about as much as me as I cared about them.
Yeah.
And it was very evident that was what was going on at that team. And we trained all the time. We did rehearsals for the mission. Like the mission itself was valuable. We were trying to stop this weapons smuggler that was smuggling weapons from Somalia to Yemen. And eventually Intel lost the boat, and so we didn't end up going on that mission. But that particular moment, the team leader, his name was Scott, he was like, hey, when you get back, you should consider like dropping a package for recon. And I was like, all right, let's do that. And the funny story was I got back from that deployment. I drafted up all the paperwork to go to recon. I go to our career planner's office, and I'm there with the package. And Scott, team leader, comes in, and he was like, hey, basically, if you want to do work, like if you want to do like soft style work, you need to go to MARSOC. Recon is doing a lot more like boat deployments and boat tours and stuff like that. He's like, you'll really end up, getting where you want to go if you go into MARSOC. And I was like, all right, that's what we'll do then.
Why is this Scott person such a good dude? Like,
I was going to say.
First of all, the biggest compliment the team guys can give you is like, "Hey, man, you need to put in a package." Like, that's such a huge deal. And then for him to be like just the guy, like, "Oh yeah, no, recon's kind of getting hosed right now. We're just going on Muse and sitting there, and they're sending the SEALs out instead of us to do stuff. But the SEALs are not whatever it's SEALs." But like, you should come to MARSOC with me, and you're like, okay, like that's. Where did this dude come from? And why does he like you so much?
Is he an angel?
Yeah.
Like, he was for me at that point in time, I'll tell you that. Like, because, the whole trajectory would have been way different had he not have done that, right? And he was actually trying to get out, which is why he was at the career planner's office, because he was, like, dropping his package to basically get out of the Marine Corps because he didn't want to be on the boats as well. And so he's like, hey, yeah, you should drop this package. So I was like, all right, yeah, I'll do that. That'd be too easy. So
were you just scratching out recon and writing in MARSOC?
No, so the catch was at the time So with MARSOC, you have to be in the Marine Corps for a period of time before you can go to selection, right? And I had not met the requirements for enough time in. I'd have been in for maybe like 2.5 years at the time. And they were looking for a minimum of 3 years, and you needed to be a sergeant to go in. And I was a corporal at E4 at the time. And so I submitted the package, it got rejected. And then I was like, all right, well, now what am I going to do in limbo? And fortunately, I had built this relationship with a Master Guns, an E9 on the ship, and he happened to by name request me for this rotation to Afghanistan. And so I ended up deploying on a personal security detail to Afghanistan, which was like a further support, further affirmation for a small team, because I ended up deploying on a 6-man team to Afghanistan and working that personal security detail for that tour. And it's kind of weird how all that fell into place. So the leadership of that personal security detail was a General U, and he was a 1-star at the time, and a Sergeant Major Barry, who was our E9 for RC Southwest in Helmand Province. And the mission there was basically going to a bunch of these KLEs and all this other stuff, and just work in the environment. Like compared to a bunch of other people's deployments and stuff, it was like very average, and very like lowly kinetic. But what was interesting at the time was I wanted to go to MARSOC, and General U and Sergeant Major Barry helped stand up MARSOC. So like, what are the odds that would happen, right? And I was like, hey, I want to go to selection, but here's the thing. I'm going to hit my max time as a sergeant, 3 years and all that stuff, while I'm on this deployment. And so if I originally was scheduled to go for a year, I was like, if I take that full year, I'm going to be beyond the window. So I need to be able to basically go home early to go to selection. And so that tour, we had a couple interesting like events happen, like nothing like too crazy, but they were like, okay, if you want to go, we'll send you, but we're not going to send you just because you want to. You have to prove it, right? And so while I was on that deployment and we were doing all these KLEs and doing all this mission work, at night I'd be going, rucking, working out, doing a whole basically pre-selection program, or what I thought was a pre-selection workout program, which would have been nice to have it from your guys' podcast as a reference back then, but didn't have that. But fortunately it worked out. And so, just like performance, I ended up being able to basically return home after about 7 months and then go to selection.
So when were you in Helmand? What time frame?
So I went in 2014 from January to July.
Well, if anything would have happened, I would have been the PJ that would have shown up.
Oh, no kidding. There at the same time, huh?
I was
been SOL, bro.
You would have.
Everybody needs a hero.
I'll tell you, everybody does need a hero. I was in Helmand. That was we actually shut down Bastion off of that deployment. So that was the last time that rescue was housed down at Bastion. We shut it down at the end of that year. So don't worry, bro. I got you. Everybody needs a PJ, and you didn't know it, but you had a little guardian angel just listening to radios.
A little guardian the whole time, huh?
Just listening to radios, buddy. He's like, does anybody need help? Does anybody need help? Nope. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym then. But don't worry, buddy. I got you.
You know what's crazy? Talking about your guys' podcast episodes and everything you're doing for the community, as far as like the fitness plans and the nutrition and like bringing people on and everything like that. When I was in Helmand, I was like, I want to go to selection and go to MARSOC, and I ended up meeting some of the other raiders that were there on that deployment, and one of them I got to interact with, and I was like, hey, want to go to selection? What should I do? They had one book was like chosen soldier or something like that, and he's like, just read that, and then be a good dude and
put out. A good dude, read this book. You're gonna be great.
That's it. And so like nowadays,
were there pictures? Was it a picture book or?
Oh,
It's the
dude, there was tons of
Marines.
pictures in there
It
for
was,
sure. For
yeah.
sure.
It's the Marines, bro. The
I'm
whole
just
thing.
saying.
Somebody
100%.
else had to read it for you too, because you're not allowed
That's
to
where
read the
most of the
Marines
learning
until you're
came from.
26. It's the pictures. So, man, this puts you directly in the wheelhouse, right? We have a ton of people that cross train in the Air Force, a ton of people that have, a different life behind them before they want to go try something impossible. And at that time, MARSOC, was a fledgling entity. Like I remember working with, one of the fledgling MARSOC dudes, doing just some random, air deployable stuff, working out of helicopters and stuff in 2010. And I mean, they were brand new. So, man, that's a lot of uncertainty kind of going into that for you. You're already established with 2 deployments under your belt as a radio operator. Your name is out there. People are by name requesting you to do cool one-off deployments. That the PSD thing is great. I love every time we talk to somebody from PSD, they're like, dude, it was awesome. I got to like rub elbows with the, generals and colonels and stuff and guys we were protecting. And then those relationships, just like yours did, ended up helping me down the road, which is awesome. But as you make the transition to get ready to go to MARSOC, it's a huge beast. You don't know what you're doing. You don't have a whole lot of training behind you. How did you make that leap? Because I mean, the parallels here for us, we talk about this, hundreds of times a week with, guys and girls that are trying to do this stuff. Well, how did you make that leap from, into the unknown?
Yeah. Not gracefully. So while I was in Afghanistan and I was trying to in spare time, prepare and work out and all this other stuff, I was kind of just like OFP trying to figure it out. And by the time that, I had essentially like earned my ticket back to try to go to selection, that was kind of like an affirmation to me that, I had figured it out in terms of like preparing and everything like that. And, I had this sort of like snafu. So I went to selection and then I got dropped in the first 2 days. And the first 2 days, the reason why I got dropped was I had a piece of medical paperwork that had not been signed off by the doc. And it was for like a kidney stone that I had in 2011. Apparently, you need a waiver for that, and the waiver hadn't been signed. And so I'm there for 2 days, and I'm thinking, here I go, here's my shot. I'm gonna, basically do all the things to try to get selected. And then they pull me aside and they're like, your paperwork's not together. Like, you're going home.
Hey, number
And
47, good job, bud. Get the fuck out.
yeah, 100%, 100%. So I was like crushed, because I was like, well, there goes my shot, and everything I wanted to do and everything like that. But I learned after I got home that I would have another shot just so long as I got all the paperwork together, which was awesome. And a sort of a blessing in disguise, what I learned when I got there just in that 2 days was like at my unit, I was like the PT stud at my unit, but at a comm unit, that's not that hard, right? But when that's your only reference, like, that's it. So I go there and I'm thinking this is going to be, not easy, obviously, but I'll at least be able to perform. Everybody there was everybody's PT stud at everybody's unit, wherever they came from. Like they had all put in just as many hours. They were all just as dedicated, and they were all just as eager for the shot for a limited number of people to be selected, right? And so when I got basically sent back that first time, having the opportunity to get sort of a glimpse as to the type of performance that is expected when you get there, I at the time, MARSOC had provided an app, like a fitness preparation app for selection. I downloaded that app and I did everything to the letter. Like I crossed every T, I dotted every I. I never missed a single rep. I never missed a single like weight increase. I never missed a lap in the pool. By the time I went there, there wasn't a single time standard that I couldn't meet or, try to blow out of the water. And that required a transformation of sorts, not just for me, but also for my family. So, my wife and I, we've been married and together my entire military career. So we've been married for 11 years and we've been together for 14. And just speaking kind of a little bit to like the power of a support network, that required training for that required, 2 workouts a day, one in the morning, one in the evening, making sure that, again, no rep was missed. disciplined, etc. It got to the point where I was like training so much, my wife would actually show up with me to the track, like to work out with me. So
Oh
we could
yeah,
like
that's
spend
badass.
time together.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. She was phenomenal and has been the entire time. Like whenever I'd go for like a ruck run or something, like sometimes like she would just park at like the turnaround point and like play with the dog at the water, and then as soon as I came back would like go home and be ready and we can just relax the rest of the day. Like it's like could not have done it without her.
Did she ever like
And
talk smack to you, like speed up? You're doing horrible
dude,
today. Those
Hurry
reps are
up.
garbage.
It'd be funny if she was
Hurry up.
talking to the dog. She's like, "Oh, look, Spot, somebody's not going to make selection because they can't figure out how to step it out. Oh,
seriously.
do you think
Like,
Daddy's ruck is too heavy? Is that why he's walking so slow?"
dude, one time, I had like this halfway turnaround point for a ruck run, and I was like pretty gassed. And I get to the turnaround point, and she's like, "Wow, I didn't think I'd be able to play with the dog this much this morning." And I was
Perfect.
like, "God dang, dude!
Perfect.
You gotta be
Got
kidding me!"
him. Got
Dude.
him. You need that. God, what a
Oh,
Spartan woman you found there. Good job.
100%.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So, man, there had to be at least a little thing in the back of your head, right? Because, ignorance breeds arrogance. And when you don't know everything, you think you know everything, and then you feel confident in that knowledge, right? So, having those first 2 days and realizing you're like, oh no, there's a whole lot of people out there that have been putting in time and putting in work. So, it was probably a good thing for you to see that. But then going back in, did that add to your anxiety level? Did that make it a little bit more real? Like, oh man, like now I know the game, I got to go and put out.
100%. It's funny. You guys had an episode like a year ago, and the title was something like, be a good dude and put out. And I was like, if I ever got here, I'd probably want to say more than just that, And then within like the first few seconds of the episode, you guys are like, that's what people who don't have anything to say. It's like, son of a bitch, dude.
Man, you fell victim to the algorithm, dog. We got you on that SEO
100%.
score. You know what I mean? Man, make sure you like and subscribe, my dude.
100%. So the anxiety for sure. What I would say is, and this applies to like the military as a whole, when you start out as like an E1 to E3, you've got just a few jobs. Show up on time, wear the right uniform, do what you're told. Those three, if you can master those three things, then eventually you'll be an NCO, right? And then when you're an NCO, then it's just making sure that those E1 to E3, are able to achieve the same thing, and you're providing the mentorship for them to do that. And when you show up to selection, it is assumed that you have mastered those three things. And you take your instructions from the whiteboard, and nothing else needs to be said. If you can't figure out how to like obey simple instructions that are painted for you literally on the whiteboard, then, that is not going to end up so well as far as selection goes. One of the things that's also assumed is that you have, developed enough of the discipline to show up and perform. So when they're providing you the workout program to prepare for selection, it's not, hey, if you can do this, you're going to get selected. It's just providing a framework to say, this is a different level of military operations. Here is a framework for you to develop the discipline. Like, here's a framework for you to develop like your body and your mind to be able to accept whatever challenges we're going to present to you. Because you're not going to show up to selection and then they're going to say, accomplish this physical challenge and you'll get selected. They're going to show up and they're going to say, can you do these three things? Can you perform? And we're going to watch and just see how you do those things. And so when I got there, it was like, okay, I've worked out. I've mastered these three things. That's at least a good foundation, right? But then you start getting all these tasks, right? You start getting like land nav. And instead of doing it as a team, you're doing it on your own, right? Okay, can you, and to me, that was like an asset versus liability test. It's like, can you be an asset to the team? Like, are you going to need to have your hand held through uncertainty, or are you going to be able to figure it out and like get to your objective? And then you do team events, and it's like, okay, we know now that you can navigate, we know that you can be an asset, but can you work with the team? And when you start doing those team events, you really start to see when people get tired, like, do they, get an attitude, right? Or are they able to like suppress that frustration and realize that everybody's, hurting, everybody's going through it. And so there's no one here that is different, right? You're just getting through it. And can you do it in a way that is going to contribute to the team? I'm trying to, I have an example, but I don't know.
Just use your full names. Make sure to tell them where they're from. Give some other personally. Yeah. Just give them
their
other
socials.
personally identifying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which day of
personally
selection was
identifying.
this? Yeah, cadre
I had
members.
this-
Which class, the actual cadre member, where are they living now? What are they doing? Do they have kids? Would they like a shout out?
Yeah.
Anything.
I'll put it to this way. So like everybody knows about team events. So there's a team event and it involves, this contraption and moving said contraption to a certain distance that is, unknown and all that stuff. And so there's leaders that are assigned. And one is an officer, one is enlisted. And during that event, when we're trying to move the contraption, you could see very clearly like two different types of people just in that one event. In this case, the officer was just supervising and watching the team push this contraption along and trying to like make sure it's guided down the right road and like all this other stuff and like shouting encouraging words and blah blah blah.
Enlisted
Right?
men, carry
Good job,
my rock.
sweaties.
I can't lead with all this weight on. Why is my skin wet?
And then here's the enlisted guy, right? The enlisted guy, his responsibility was making sure that we followed the correct route, right? And so this enlisted guy would walk maybe like 50 or 100 paces, right? And then he'd put this line to let himself know that, okay, we've covered this distance, right? And then he would sprint back with the team, help pick up the contraption and move it to that 100 yard line, right? And then, or 100 meter line. And then he would repeat that process. And he'd go out 100, mark a spot, and then sprint back and help the team push along. Go out, sprint back, help the team push along. And you could tell at the end of the exercise who was favored, let's say, to be a part of the team, right? And it's just simple stuff like that. And there's, that's something that you can't prepare for. That's something that, you'll show as a member of the team when you get there, if you're that type of person or not.
So that enlisted guy was just being a good dude and just really putting
being a
out.
good dude. That's an example of being a good dude. That's an example of putting out.
I'll never be able to get this image out of my head. It's like, as you're explaining this, you're like, yeah, the enlisted guys weren't really happy with the officer because he was supervising. It probably was super tough for that officer as he was like on top of the contraption when you guys were carrying it. It's hard to point that out. So, earlier you kind of talked about it when you were, on that first deployment, and you saw some things that you wanted, and it's intoxicating being in that team room. It's the best way that I can possibly describe it. It's what guys miss when they get out. Kyle, when we were talking before the show, we're just talking about show prep. And I was like, dude, super simple. It's 3 dudes in a team room and we're just going to BS. And you were like, God, I miss that.
100%.
That thing that you saw from the outside, now you get to experience it on the inside. Spoiler alert, you got picked up out of that selection at MARSOC and all those lessons that you learned. But did you feel like you were finally at home? Did you feel like you finally fit in once you got into those smaller team rooms and really started getting after the MARSOC mission set?
I felt that I was where I wanted to be, and I felt like I had to earn the ability to say that I belong there. I like when I went through the training, the ITC pipeline, the individual training course pipeline. That is about, depending on when you take selection, it's about a 2-year pipeline. ITC itself is about 9 months, and then you have another 6 months of language school. So it's a pretty long pipeline, very similar to like the other services. And immediately when you get to ITC, you're put in a team. And so right there, I was like, okay, this is where I want to be, right? Like, this is where all the dudes are. We're all like, laughing, cracking jokes and having fun. And then when it comes time to like put out, we're all like looking at each other as we're like carrying the rescue Randys like to class and back, or the logs to class and back, or whatever. And we're just there. We're in it now, right? There's Staff Sergeant Antonik, who was killed in Afghanistan, and he has this saying that all it takes is all you got, and that is like that's like the unofficial official motto of MARSOC, and that's kind of what I mean as far as like earning a spot to like say that I belong there. And before, during my time, there was no badge, there was no like insignia or anything that you wore, and so it wasn't like people were like chasing the T-shirt or anything like that, and so you had to really want to be there, and then you had to actually want to be a part of a team, and you actually had to adopt the mission as your responsibility, as opposed to like, oh, I'm just in the military, right? And so that's kind of what I mean by like earning it. And I don't, and maybe this is kind of one of those like, team guy curses is you got to like earn it every day, right? And so you kind of always wonder, if you made it, or if you belong or whatever, and you've got great teams and everything like that, you got the dynamic there, but there's just always this feeling in the back of your mind like, what more could I be doing to support the team? So
good. That's we say it all the time on the show, dude. You don't buy a spot on the teams, you rent it, and that rent is due every day.
You should have that expectation anxiety all the time. You're just always there. It just lives with you.
It sucks, but it's also good because it helps what drives you to be better and continue on.
100%.
So the military, the Air Force, the Marines, Navy, they all have these different programs that some are well known, like going from enlisted to officer, and then you have other programs, and like the one that you did, the enlisted to medical. Is that what it's called? Enlisted to medical?
Enlisted to medical degree prep program.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about that. Does that go across the DoD, or is that like just a Marine program? I don't even know if it's just a Marine program or not.
So it's a really young program. It had only been around for maybe 8 years before before I applied, maybe 7, and it's phenomenal as a program. It is open to all services, to include the Coast Guard, and
Ooh.
yeah, and
for those of you for those of you not watching on YouTube, he used air quotes. He said, "It's a service." So shout out to the Coasties. Those dudes are awesome. Well, the one dude that jumped on the sub the one time is super awesome. I don't know what the rest of them do.
Yeah.
Dude, that video is legendary for the Coast Guard.
It's so badass. Like, bro, you almost died, dude. That's a submarine with narco terrorists in it.
You could have possibly made for the Coasties.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, they'll use it forever. But,
so it's a relatively new program. How do you get into it? Do you already have to have a degree, or are you like, so can you give us some details about it?
Yeah. So it's open to all services. You do have to have a degree, which you can get any degree. It does not have to be a medical science degree. I got mine from Norwich University, like the typical soft degree, the strategic studies one. And I got that, and I applied with it, and I got in, which is great. So any degree, any service, and they're really looking for, and when their version or their ideal of like a top candidate for the program, because there's only in the Marine Corps, there's only 5 slots out of the whole Marine Corps. There's 5 slots for, I believe, the Navy, and then I think the Army and the Air Force has a few more. They have to fill about 25 to 30 seats a year for the class. And I got in obviously just as as a raider, and there's other people who have gotten in as medics. We've had people who have gotten in as linguists. We've had people who have gotten in as supply. You can have any job, any degree, anything. They're really just looking to make sure that you've met the educational requirements. You have to take the ACT or the SAT, and you have to get a certain score for that. And then provided that you've met all of those observable metrics, they look at your performance. For us, it's our fit reps, evals for other services and stuff like that, and basically try to tease out, what is your overall performance just as a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine.
Yeah.
And
And
then
that's,
you go up to a board and then they do interviews and run the selection.
yeah, that kind of thing's pretty standard for a lot of those programs. Like when we have enlisted that are going to pilots and that kind of stuff, they have to have a certain GPA, and I think it's like a 3.6 and above, which is not difficult. But what you have is you have people that when they did do their college, they weren't thinking like GPA mattered. They thought that just the degree mattered. So they just kind of, phoned it in. So then they end up having to go retake classes to
Right.
then up their GPA. Plus they have to take and I forget what the name of the pilot test they have to take. So it's same kind of thing. Like it's a whole person concept of what kind of person are you, and do we think that you're going to be a good doctor and that kind of stuff. So how far along in the program are you in it?
So I have finished the program. So it's a 2-year prep program. So what they do is they essentially, once you have your bachelor's complete, it's a post-bac program. And so it's like a 2-year pre-medical studies post-bachelor program. They run you through all the hard sciences like the physics and the chemistry and all that stuff. And then after that 2 years, you apply to med school. And from there, you can apply to any med school as well. So you can apply to USIS if you want to, which is where I applied. And you don't have to apply, in the sense that if you get accepted at USIS, but you also get accepted at another university, you'd rather go there. You have the option. You can either go to USIS and stay active duty, or you can go to another, like a regular university, and you can do a different scholarship program called HPSB. So either route that you take once you graduate that program, your school's paid for medical school, and then all you pay back on the back end is just your time back in the service.
Okay. Well, you guys kind of teased this before or you teased me and Trent anyway before we even started. So tell me a little bit about ARK.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can tell you a little bit
I
about
don't know
ARK.
if that's what you were teasing me about, but I'm looking at your hat the whole time and I'm
It's
like,
not.
what's
You're
ARK?
trying it. You're trying
Yeah.
it.
So that's not what I was going to tease you about.
That's fine.
But so I can kind of pivot because it goes to it kind of all connects. So I'm going to take a step back and go to my third tour and talk about that a little bit, because that kind of paves the way for the program, and is where like this kind of story drops. So on my third tour, I was with my team, and we were obviously like we were out on deployment, but within the first 2 weeks, so it was my team and we were partnered with our partner nation. Within 2 weeks, and this was out in the Pacific, within 2 weeks of arriving at the our location, we had a MASCAS. We had 11 PNF that basically were casualties from a firefight that happened. And I was a JTAC at the time, so I coordinated a few of the calls, and then it obviously coordinated the CASVAC as well. And so they got flown back to the like FOB that we were at, and there was a little clinic. And when we get in the clinic, essentially like mission's over, everyone's here and back, and all the patients are getting offloaded and transferred to this clinic, and the whole team responds to this MASCAS, right? And the first patient that I got was this kid who had gotten shot in the face, and he got shot in the box. And long story short, he needed an airway.
A quick clarification of terms, everybody. When he says shot in the box, because I'm definitely making a reel about that, he means from nose to navel, there is a box where all of your vital organs are housed. That's where he got shot. Typically, when you say shot in the box, it's somewhere nose to navel, draw a square around your body. There you go. Sorry, we have children that populate our comment section. They're going to find out that they're going to be like, oh, this doctor said shot in the box. Sorry, we're children.
Typically me leaving those comments, actually.
It's Trent. Yeah, I didn't want to air it out like that, but it's going to be Trent. Be like, make sure to check this episode out where he says shot in the box. Be like, it was a great episode, Trent. Guy gave great information for an hour, and you came away. That's okay, because earlier in the podcast when you were talking about the general tone at the unit, and it's like the general tone, said that we're not going to, the war is over. I pictured that as an actual general, like a guy named General Tone. like walking in, like maybe his name was like Tony, but everybody called him General Tone. And he walks in, he's like, "Hey boys, war's over." And you're like, "Oh crap, what am I gonna do now?"
Dude, I was not gonna let that be the whole story as far as how that ended. You know what I mean? That would have just sucked.
Hilarious.
But although I probably should preface in saying that, yeah, like it's probably good when wars end, you know. But I just wanted
Sure.
to
Listen, it's fun. You're in a safe space here. Like that's what people try to tell. Like every once in a while, we'll get a troll in the comments, be like, "Oh, you guys wasted your life searching for blood and treasure." Be like, "Yeah, but that shit was so fun." Have you ever blasted like Taylor Swift going onto a target in Afghanistan where people are gonna die? That shit is fucking great, and it wasn't me. How awesome is that? Get out of here. You guys just don't understand warfare, homie.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's like it's the best thing ever. You know, it's like the best worst thing that there's a guy, Thomas Sowell, famous economist and everything like that. He was in the Marine Corps back in the day. He had this phrase. He said, "It's $1 million experience you wouldn't take $1 million to do again."
Yeah.
I love
Well, it's like
Thomas Sowell.
you talked about your father, right? And your father's like, once he figured out, he was like, "Hey, man, it's not everything that you think it is, except it kind of is." And once you like made the decision, he was like, he knows. He's like, "I can't stop this dude. You can't explain to a kid like the positives and the negatives." He's like, "It's if he survives, it's going to be pretty rad. So have a good time."
100%. And it's strange too, you know, especially like with you guys, you know, like if any of our kids ever like join the military and have those experiences, the way my dad did it is he sort of like prefaced it as that this is going to be a big change, right? And then as certain things happen and like certain experiences that I had happen, he would start to reveal more of his stories. And I would say that, you know, now like our relationship is already good, but now it's like, you know, locked. So it's there's something about the military, dude. Brings everyone together.
You have a common frame of reference. You know, if you tell someone outside the military about some of these things, especially like the very combat-oriented stories, I mean, and if you start chuckling about certain things that happen, it's like your son's going to be like, "We got to get dad committed because he's not right."
Turns out dad's a psychopath.
Yeah.
We deal with that here on the podcast too. Is, you know, people ask us, you know, and it's no shot to them. I just had a phone call on, you know, Wednesday or Thursday with a young dude that's trying to get in, and he's like, "Oh yeah, man. Well, you know, what was this like? And what was that like?" Bro, even if I could somehow explain to you how this terrible situation made me a better person and it brought me closer to my friends, there's no way you'd understand that. There's no way,
Right.
without, like Trent was saying, without that frame of reference, without that, you know, without that information, there's no way I could sit on the phone with you for 2 hours and try to explain why, you know, this specific experience, and you'd never get it. It's the old quote of, you know, to those that understand, no explanation is necessary. To those that don't understand, no explanation will suffice. It's one of those things you just can't possibly, I can't put you inside of my head and have you feel those things. But it's great to hear that you had that experience actually brought you closer. So when folks out there are talking about, you know, their parents and, you know, having a difference of opinion, maybe when you're getting in, like, if you do it right, and if you do it transparently and from a place of, you know, grace, this is going to make your relationship stronger. It's not going to end your relationship with your parents. You're going to come out of it, like you said, you won't be a different person. It's not like they turn you into a robot or they give you a lobotomy after E8 and after, you know, major. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
04 and E8s lose their minds at some point. So you're a different person then. But you know, that is actually going to make you stronger. That those trials and tribulations and going through that new experience with your parents, that's going to bring you closer. And it's a hard thing for us to try to explain here, although we do try.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything that you just said. It's
Nice.
yeah. I mean, and it's interesting too. Is like when you were talking about you know, when people ask you those stories, like sometimes I find that I will be like averse to talking about some of those stories for that reason. It's like you're not really going to understand. And you can tell when people are trying to understand versus trying to just like hear a story, you know? And obviously a lot of those stories carry some like weight behind it. And so you're not trying to just say it for someone's entertainment. You know, you're trying to say it because it like means something and you're trying to communicate, or you're trying to like, it's more than just the story when you start, you know, talking about it. So, Yeah, like with
But
your parents and with
you
your
were
other
telling a
friends.
story about ARK, right? About someone getting shot, and then we took a left turn
Oh yeah,
into
You guys
parents
totally
and
pulled the peaches.
By
yeah.
we,
yeah.
you mean me completely derailed it
Yeah.
with inanities that people hate on the podcast.
So the
Sorry.
other thing that Kyle spends his time on that he doesn't have time for, I think that we were talking about that and why that happened.
So yeah, so we'll hop back into it. So fast forward a little bit. Third tour with team, 2 weeks, mask has first patient I get. He's shot in the face and he's shot in the box. And that was the first mask has that I had ever experienced. Unfortunately, there would be, many more after that. But um, the when I got to him, we had this one partner nation doc that was with us. And this guy who was on the table here, he needed an airway. And I look at him, I'm like, cool, I'll take care of these lacerations. I'll freaking ELD this guy. I'll put like this chest seal here. Like I'll do all the basic TCCC stuff. You can crack this guy. He's like, all right. And do everything, get back up. This kid is like choking on his own blood, which is, not what you want. And I'm like, hey man, you really need to get this correct. You need to get it right now. And this Part Nation doc is just sweating. He's never been in this situation before, obviously, and he's just frozen. He's not moving, and he just looks up at me and he's like, "You do it." And I was like, "All right, dude." So do the crike. It works, thank God. And he ends up like making it, gets evac'd out, higher echelon of care, ends up recovering totally fine. And we were there long enough in that deployment that we learned he not only recovered, he went and got married, which was pretty rad. And then he sent a letter back to our chain of command through his, saying thanks and stuff. And so the whole story kind of came full circle. It was really, really good. And at the time, immediately after that, Mascaz, I was just sitting back in our team room, and I was kind of just like, that's when it kind of all started like, sitting in and like being like, oh, that happened, right? And I was just like, I could do that forever. I could, it was a positive outcome. Like it was, and we were able to do something, and we were able to like make an impact, make a difference. And so that's when I started kind of looking at this whole medical program or looking for an option for the medical program. And so I was going to school. I was like trying to finish my degree and everything like that. We had a few more mass cases, but I ended up finding that EMDP2 program, right? And so I was like, long shot, I'll apply. We'll see what happens, whatever. Applied. While the application's going on downrange, um, we end up like wrapping up deployment. We get back. I ended up talking to like a buddy of mine, and I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about this EMDB2 program, I'm thinking about this or that or whatever, right? And he's like, there are docs that work in SOF. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, all I know are like deltas and SARCs and all this other stuff. And he was like, she's like, check out this podcast. Do you know what SOST is? And I was like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, just check this out, right? It ended up being your guys' podcast. And it was the episode that Sully was on. And I forget the number, but it was like 4 or 5 years ago that this episode had been recorded. And so I literally watched you guys like have him and Ray on, from Sauce while they were on at the time. And I was like, holy freaking crap. Like, all right, this is it. This is the future. This is what I'm going to do, And so what was nuts is like from that podcast, like lean like this entire opportunity to be able to like stay in SOF, to go like pursue medicine, and like basically you guys like through this podcast painted this entire path that made it possible for me as like a Marine Raider to go to be a doc, and then also go back to the SOF and like back to that team environment. So that was just freaking nuts. And it's crazy how here today it's all come full circle and you guys are just doing it again. So even stuff
And
that you
that's why
guys
I
did
didn't
years
tell you,
ago.
Peaches. I wanted you to feel that good. He told me that via text message, and in my head, I was like, I'm not telling Trenton Peaches this. We're going to talk about this. Because he was like, dude, crazy thing. Like, you guys actually helped me. Like, I heard that sauced episode, and I was like, what the heck is this? I didn't even know you could do that. And then that kind of like solidified my way forward. I was like, I'm not telling Trenton Peaches that. I want that. I want to see the joy on their faces in real time as they.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
I know.
Like,
It's so nuts. You guys like had a direct impact on the entire, route that I've been on the last, few years. So,
yeah, that's cool. I don't take
100%.
compliments very well, so just like deal with the awkwardness of
And
me
that's
right
the
now.
No
other
worries.
reason why I told you is because I knew that you and Trent are the worst at it. So I know seeing that in real time and getting it on video. Mwah,
I get it that compliments and stuff like that are a gift, so don't throw it in my face. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, man, okay, yeah, cool,
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Cool. Boy,
So,
I hope you didn't
moving
listen to
on,
me and ruin your life, because apparently we have that power too. Because if you can succeed, we can also like convince people to go try to do something, and then when they fail out, they're like, "Hey, what the fuck, bro? You guys said I could do this. Were you a good dude? Did you put out? Oh crap! Sorry, man.
I just weren't a good dude, I guess. I don't
Sorry,
know.
we just weren't a good dude." So, man, we do want to talk about ARK too, because not only are you going through the medical program, thanks for the shout out, man. Like we hope to provide that value. We hope to provide somebody at least with, all we did with that is put the information out there, and that's been the goal of the podcast since we started. Right? Is, man, people don't know that these things exist. People, to a smaller extent, people have no idea how to get into MARSOC. People don't know that you can go from MARSOC to med school. Like, people don't know about these programs. So, man, you're doing the Lord's work too, Kyle. So just in your sit down with us today, like, there's going to be a ton of people that are like, I had no idea that I could go get some infantry time in, get a couple deployments, and then have this opportunity presented to me. That's a big deal. But that wasn't enough. Then you decided that you were going to start ARK, and I swear we're going to talk about this, and we'll quit derailing you. So tell us what ARK is. Tell us about the app. Tell us exactly what it's meant to get after.
Yeah, perfect. So that is where that segues. So I get back from that deployment. I end up getting into the EMDP2 program, and now I have to PCS. And we've all done a PCS, permanent change of station, all that other stuff. And that was like pretty dark for me. So, my wife and I have been together this entire time. I PCS to Virginia, and I did all the research that we normally would. I called the sheriff's department. I looked at crime statistics. I looked at all this other stuff, trying to figure out, hey, we're gone a lot. I want to make sure that, my wife has somewhere like safe to live and everything like that. And thought that I did enough. And within a couple weeks of arriving at that duty station in Virginia, 2 men attempted to abduct my wife. And yeah. And
it's a shame that those guys are dead.
If I would have been there, 100%.
Good God, man, terrifying.
It's that
Obviously, from the story you told earlier, your wife is a national treasure. So,
right, yeah,
that was the worst phone call that I've ever had. And you guys know, you go through the pipeline, you go through all the training, you go through the deployments. Like, there's nothing in your mind that would tell you that you cannot handle that situation if you're there. And it just wasn't. I was at work, and she was going for a walk around our neighborhood, and I get a call after she had run away, thankfully, and she's like breathing heavy, and she's crying, and there's nothing I can do except listen. And so, anyways, I that rewired my brain. And I was like, okay, I got to make sure that this like never happens again. Because if I had been there, I would be in jail. And that's just the way that story would have gone.
You probably would have gotten out. They probably would have understood.
Not unless you're in New York. If you're in New York, you're screwed, bud. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
right. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I have to, like, let me just, see, is this a problem that's happening with like a lot of people, and so I ended up doing all this research, and the military community is small, so you have a ton of people you can talk to immediately, and like all of these people are telling me, okay, maybe that didn't happen for me, but what did happen is my wife lost her job because we moved. I lost the childcare that I had, and now I'm on a wait list. I don't know where exactly I'm going to live, and the people that I am going to talk to, like my sponsor or whatever, like I never hear from them, and I don't know anything. And so you get to your duty station, and there's a bunch of like studies that have been done that like Congress has commissioned from like the Rand Corporation, and I went back 40 years, and after 40 years, I was like, okay, it's been a problem long enough, right? It turns out, 6 to 12 months for a military spouse to like find their first friend. And it's not because they're not sociable. It's because of all the things that we mentioned, right? They have to get a new job. They have to find childcare. They have to rearrange all their medical care. They have to like figure out how to live in this new area. And then if it's at the 12-month mark, turns out that usually the spouse, the service member, is deploying, or they're going for some extended training. And so right as soon as the military spouse gets settled, other half is gone. And then that they come back after 6-7 months or whatever, and now there's only a year, if they're lucky, before they're recontemplating the next move, right? And so my thought process was like, okay, this is a problem that's affecting everybody. Like, why isn't there a solution? It's pretty simple. Just get people in contact ahead of time. Give them all the resources that they need ahead of time. The people with all of the answers are the people that live in that duty station. And it turns out that's the community that you're going to be working with and are going to be friends with within that 6 to 12 months. So why not just make those introductions already? And you know the way the military works, like the people that you go to like PMEs, like if you go to an NCO school or if you go to a dive school or a jump school, like they'll more than likely one of them is going to be at the duty station moving to anyways.
Right.
And you constantly like you'll go to those schools and then you'll talk and you'll be friends, you'll exchange numbers, but then time and distance starts to separate that. And you go to like the other social platforms and stuff that are out right now, and it's less about connection and more about entertainment these days, right? And so that's not really a good solution. And then on top of that, like when you get out, all of my friends who have gotten out, it's like a solid year of absolute like loneliness because it's just loss. You're not showing up to the team room anymore. You don't have the same job that you have anymore. Like all your friends are, like the machine moves on. Like they're like, when I left my unit, like they're gearing up for another deployment. They're gearing up for another school. They're gearing up for all this other stuff. And those transitions are hard. So in a nutshell, ARK is a pocket companion for like the lifestyle of the military member from recruit to veteran. And so when it comes to PCS, it's very simple, like plan, connect, move. You go in there and all of the questions that you have to go to a bunch of different websites for, it's right there. So what's your BAH? What's your COLA? What can you expect to pay in utilities? Like what is the financial situation that you're going to arrive in? It's right there. You just put in like your rank and everything like that, and it's there. Then you go to the connect. Again, all of those people are already at the duty station. All of your friends are already there. Like you can just connect ahead of time and you can start asking those questions. What neighborhood do you feel safe living in? Like what's the commute to base for you? Like what do you want to do on the weekends? What is there to do? You can ask all those questions, you can interact and connect, and like all the identities and stuff are like verified as part of the military community to even get on the app. And so that instead of talking to some random person, you're talking to somebody who's going through that military life with you. And then you go to the move portion. And in the move portion, you have all like the service providers that go there and manage your whole move for you, all in that one spot. So instead of checking a bunch of emails all the time, instead of like wondering where the phone calls are coming in and trying to keep everything between different chat channels, it's all just in one place. It's all in one checklist that you can use to make sure that you get real-time updates with everything that's going on with your move. And so it solves all the problems of what's the financial situation going to be like, who am I going to talk to when I'm there, and how am I going to get help with the move in general. And when you're done with that, you can still enjoy everything else as far as like communicating with all your friends that you collect and interact with throughout your time in the military. And then when you get out, how you can get connected with all your veteran benefits. So right now we're partnered with the American Legion. and they have a program on there that gets vets who are transitioning out connected with the veteran service officers so they can get their VA disability rating, they can get reintegrated back into their community. And it's just supposed to be this one tool that you can use your whole military career where everything is at and answers all the questions.
Yeah. And I had it up on the screen. You guys can go check it out at arkmobileapp.com. That's ARK, A-R-K, mobile app, all one word.com. It's awesome. And I was sharing it here on the screen, and I'll bring it up here again. But man, it's got absolutely everything you need. And you guys can see as I bring it up here, man, you've got your military checklist that you can create a custom PCS checklist. You can get it on the App Store and Google Play. All kinds of stuff that he was just talking about here, this social connectivity app, man. The value of actually, you know who the subject matter expert is on military moves? It ain't the people in the offices telling you how to do it. It's the people that just did it 6 months ago. Like, you find a good military spouse, like your wife. Imagine being able to go to that person and go, hey, what's BS in this process? What do we really need to look out for? What's the move really like? Like, that is who you need to be connected with. And then you have, like you said, that connective tissue already there. Like, man, I've been the guy that showed up and was like, hey, whose name is this on this sponsor packet? And it's some random dude who's like, oh yeah, I just get all the new guys. Like, I just sent you the email. Like, you'd never talked to him before, right? Like, that's not how it's supposed to work. So, man, just like everything else, you were just a good dude. You put out, and then you saw a place where you could actually engage. And ARK was the natural outgrowth of that, man. That's awesome. We'll make sure to get it in the show notes on here, and then we can even throw it in our link tree if you'd like. We can get all kinds of people to get visibility on it. So that's awesome, dude.
That would be awesome and much appreciated. It's available on all the app stores right now, so feel free.
Heck yeah. And as you said at the beginning, listen here, JAG nerds. Provided for free as a military service. He's doing so on his own recognizance and his own off time. So go back to looking for whatever it is you guys do during the day to make yourself feel good. Anyway,
you litigious little shits.
Litigious little shits. So, man, yeah, I'm sure you know from listening to the podcast, PAO and JAG get no love on this podcast, along with the Thunderbirds, because they're useless. But anyway, so Kyle, you've done a bunch of crazy stuff, from, just deciding that you were going to, come back to America from Northern Cali, off the snowboarding team to stop being a hippie and get into the world's finest Marine Corps. All the way through your journey through MARSOC. And as if that wasn't enough, like, now all you need to do is be an astronaut, and you can be like the Navy SEAL that is a doctor, an astronaut, and a special operator. But man, that's a lot of things that, people try and people fail at and people can't get there. We always end on advice. What advice would you give to somebody that's sitting there on the precipice of their life, right? They didn't peak in high school. They actually are going to go do other things after they get out of high school. What advice would you have to those folks that are trying to do something impossible?
Man, never give up and just freaking do it. Is like the two things. Never give up, because you never know. Like, there's like this saying that small men who cast big shadows should know that is a sign the sun is starting to set. And when you, like, my coach apparently woke up and thought that the big shadow was high school, and I just don't think that is the message that someone who's young should hear. I think that it should be like, whatever you want to create for yourself and for your life, like, you can do it. There's people who have done it, and there's going to be a path for you. As long as you don't give up, that opportunity will present itself. And then if you just freaking do it, you're going to have all these different things that are going on mentally. You'll never feel prepared and all this other stuff. And I think that people should realize that, like, if you were prepared, you would already be there. Right? So you just got to freaking do it. You will develop and you'll become the person that you think you should be in order to attain it. Just get after it.
Heck yeah.
It's simple.
And as always, be a good dude and put out. Kyle Bond, man, thanks for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. You absolutely crushed it. Like, I hope that somebody hears your words just like you did a couple years ago and finds a way forward. Like, that's why we're here. And, now you're part of it. You went from full circle. You went from somebody that was influenced by our propaganda to a willing participant in it. So I just want to say thanks, man. You're crushing it out there on the East Coast. thanks for everything that you do. Thanks for your service. I appreciate you guys, you coming on specifically. And man, anytime you want to come back and talk about your journey, you let us know. Everybody go over to arkmobile.app.com. Check it out. We'll put it into the link tree and into the show notes here on the page, so you can find it everywhere we are. That's going to wrap it up. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Go over to onesready.com. Check that link tree out in our IG or anywhere. You can just Google Ones Ready. We pop up everywhere. We're just dominating that SEO score. So we appreciate the likes and the follows, comment. And then Kyle, if there is anything that you want, like if you want people to be able to reach out to you just after we're done here, just go ahead and give us the info. We'll put that in the show notes too.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for the opportunity to come on and for lighting the way.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Everybody out there, train hard. See you next time.